Roy went to school out in California, but I don't know where you're from. Where did you start out? Where were you
Well,
born?
I was born in Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was 6 years old, my dad decided to stop farming and moved us to Southern California. So I had a Midwestern upbringing in Southern California.
Okay. But
And
then you went up to Northern.
yeah, I got my undergraduate degree up in Central California with um, in biology, but I met a mycologist there that turned me on
Who's
to.
that?
That was Dave Gotelli.
Oh, okay. I've
He-
heard the name. Yeah,
yeah,
I used to be a society member.
yes, he was a student of Howard Whistler's up in
Okay.
Seattle. But David worked on marine fungi, and during his PhD, he was working on this aquatic fungus that was a parasite on marine crab eggs. And so he shot a video, or a 16 millimeter film.
In those days.
Yeah, before digital. And it was absolutely fantastic because he showed how this cytoplasm moved and the spores would release and all of that. And it was absolutely fantastic. And that's what really turned me on
Yeah.
to mushrooms and fungi in particular. Yeah.
And so you went further north?
No, and then because we would go, David would take us into the Sierra Nevada to look for mushrooms, and there were all of these things around, and I said, Dr. Gotelli, what are these? He says, I don't know. And I said, but you're a mycologist, you should know what these are. And he says, well, maybe you should go to graduate school. So I went over to San Francisco State and got in with Harry Tiers and took a master's there. And he encouraged me to go on for a PhD. So then I went to UMass, worked with Howard Bigelow. And
So let's go back just
Okay.
a little bit to, I wanted to talk to you about Harry Tiers because he had many, many master's students.
yes, he did. 30 something, over 30 master's students
Yeah,
during
I
his.
think I have most of them because he gave them to me before he died.
Oh, okay.
And it was a very long list, and in fact, when we were, Bob Gilbertson and I were doing a genealogy, we actually put them all down
Yeah.
because there were no PhDs.
No, he couldn't
Yeah.
offer a PhD there.
Yeah,
That's
but
right.
he surely did influence many people.
Oh yeah, a lot of them went on for PhD.
Yeah.
Well, Don Wicklow, Dave Malik.
Malik.
Yeah.
And then, in addition to that, a number of them became botanists, I think. Went on and got PhDs in botany
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
than mycology.
Yeah, well, he had students working on bryophytes if the bryologist wasn't on on sabbatical or something like that,
Yeah.
or algae or something else. So,
Well, so then you went to Massachusetts. And Howard Bigelow was always someone that I thought was a bit of a character, but he gave me a big chance in mycology and the society. Because when I was really pretty young, he put me on the awards committee.
Oh,
Which
okay.
was a lot of work, but it
Yeah.
gave you some visibility in the society, and it was very,
Sure.
very helpful.
uh-huh.
But I remember him he had funny sort of food habits. He wouldn't eat certain things, and
Right.
he chose, instead of a wonderful salad bar, barley soup or something like that. I thought that was the most wonderful thing anything at a place where we ate when we were at a meeting together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it must have been kind of fun working with him.
It was. He would suggest topics and then leave you alone and let you go as far as you could, and then maybe bring you back and steer you in a proper direction. So he let you learn on your own, but then he would advise you.
When you needed it.
Yeah, when you needed it, he would bring you back and say, wait, just
Yeah.
try this. And then, okay, you can try that. And he
Yeah.
goes, there we go. Yeah.
And I always thought it was very interesting that his wife was there with him.
Margaret
at
was there,
UMass.
yeah.
And did they interact during the day, or did
Oh,
they?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they would go, have lunch together, and either Margaret would go to Howard's office or Howard would go to Margaret's office, and they would have their lunch.
But
and
they didn't work together ever.
Not
really.
No. I mean, when they would teach mycology class, they were team teaching the class. But one of the other significant men, besides Howard and Margaret, was Emery Simmons. and he was the curator of the Quartermaster Culture Collection at that time. And that was my first job, as instead of being a TA in botany classes or whatever, I worked in Emery's lab, and that was absolutely one of the most fantastic experiences I've ever had. Just working with, mold fungi, keeping the collection. I don't know how many thousands of isolates there were, but just trying to keep that business going, because he was doing the IMC2, getting ready for IMC2 at that time. So basically, me and Tim Baroni, we just kind of ran the lab.
Yeah, there was some famous fungi in that collection. Huh?
Yeah. Well, the big one was this trichoderma that is isolated at Guadalcanal, because it was the U.S. government was concerned about the uniforms and the tents and on the GIs, they were rotting. So they isolated this fungus that was responsible for doing all the decomposition of the cotton. And that was because this fungus had a characteristic of producing this enzyme which rotted all of the cotton. And so that became a very, very famous strain.
And actually you mentioned IMC2 and Emery's work on that. And I think that trichoderma got described by Emery as Reesii
in the abstract.
In his abstract, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That was the fungus that came from Guadalcanal.
Okay.
Yeah. And it got named for
Reese.
I can't. Ed Reese, I think his name was.
I don't remember what his name was, but they did they worked for the Quartermaster Corps and were interested in decomposition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So who was there with you in the lab when you were in school?
Well, in Emery's lab, there was Tim Baroni and me, and a woman who was doing all of the, what was it called? She was trying to make freeze-dried cultures, for permanent storage. Yeah, lyophilization, to store away for, keep them ice, so we didn't have to keep everything alive all the time. So, but Tim was basically just transferring, keeping the collection going, and my job was to answer all of the incoming requests for this strain, that strain.
And there were lots of those?
Yeah, they would come in 3-4 a week, but we had to grow up fresh strains and then ship them out.
Were they military people or?
No, actually it was often a lot of commercial companies who had some product, and if they applied, say, these 4 strains to their product, then they could say, our product passes military specification XYZ, and so they could put that in their commercial.
Did they have to pay?
No, because it was a U.S. government thing, it was free. So,
Good deal.
So sometimes we would get, every couple of weeks we'd get another request from the same company for the same thing that they just had. It was crazy. Anyway, but I learned a lot in that lab. I really did. And Emery was a wonderful mentor.
So Howard, I know, had been a prisoner of war in Germany during World War II. Did he talk about that ever?
Not much. I learned a little bit about it from him, but I also learned it because Howard and Harry Tiers were good friends. Yeah. And I think I learned more about it from Harry than I did from Howard.
About Howard?
What happened, because he was in the Battle of the Bulge. Howard was. And when the Germans were advancing, his platoon was caught in that advance. And
My father was very nearby.
Okay. So Howard followed his platoon leader, and he was captured. And then he was put on a boxcar train and sent towards the Russian front. So he was a POW for, I don't know, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. And then liberated by the Russian army.
So it was relatively fast.
Yeah, but he hadn't eaten in a week. And so the Russians liberated them and gave him some rotten food, and he was sick for a long time. So, but he got over it. But yeah, it was a rough, rough situation. But so he didn't talk about it to me. You know. Yeah.
Well, I remember one evening after a AIBS meeting, Bob Gilbertson and I were invited to go out to their home, and we ate corn, sweet corn.
Yeah.
But Gil had been in World War II too. He had been shot and evacuated. I think he was about 18 at the time, and got out fairly quickly because he had been sort of in the same area. But they sat there, and it got dark on us, and nobody turned on any lights, and they just talked.
Talked for it.
And
Oh
talked.
wow. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
they're similar experiences.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, what other kinds of things happened in those days?
Just
You just got out.
working on my thesis and finishing
Yeah.
that, and then when I got my PhD, then the postdoc opened up at the Farlow,
Harlow.
and went with to work with Don for 3 years, I think it was.
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, so
I
you know,
didn't realize that
Yeah.
you'd been there that long.
so it was started in 1980 when I graduated, and yeah, it was for 3 years. 1983, then an internship opened up at the New York Botanical Garden, and so I applied for this internship. It was something done by the what was the museum science, something in the federal government. They had these yearly internships, and so the NYBG had these yearly internships, and I applied for that, and
When you were
went down, and then a position opened, and became on the staff, got on the staff, permanent staff.
okay.
Yeah. And so,
Okay.
yeah, since like
That's-
83, 84.
And you
been there.
stayed in that one job.
Yeah.
That's
It's been
pretty lucky.
it's been really fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has. It's given me a lot of opportunity to go places and see things, see interesting fungi, stuff, meet interesting people, you know, not just here in the U.S. like you. But
Flatterer.
no,
you,
seriously.
we have friends all over the world.
Oh,
It's
sure.
really wonderful.
Yeah, and that's what's great about this conference. You know, you see people, I haven't seen you, and you know, and you get to trade.
Well, I was talking to people. I can picture when I saw him last. It was in Thailand.
Yeah, exactly.
Our last mycology conference.
Exactly, and some I hadn't seen since Edinburgh or Vancouver. So yeah, it's good.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Meredith, pleasure.